They might not be even capable of any more than 25% of an increase in metabolic rate when they're cold stress, which is another reason why our awareness needs to be so heightened. Now, brown fat develops starting at about 26 to 28 weeks, and it continues to be developed until they're about 4 to 6 weeks post-term. So a month and a half of life. In newborn humans, around 5% of the body weight is made up of brown fat. So you can imagine, we already know babies lose 8 to 10% of their body weight. So imagine if they burn their brown fat off because we're not recognized cold stress, they can lose another 5%. Newborn babies who can't yet shiver, they have patches of brown fat between the shoulder blades. They have it around the adrenals, around the kidneys, the head, the neck, scapula, and the biggest area that we want to talk about is the axilla. And we understand that that's the major place for brown fat. So its job is to take in the nutrients to burn their energy to produce heat for regulating baby's body temperature. I love this picture of brown fat because it really shows those lipid globulates and then those little mitochondria, those dark molecules. So brown fat constitutes, it's a second what they call sympathetic effector organ, and that provides a metabolic source of non-shivering thermogenesis. Now, an effector organ is a muscle or a gland that secretes and contracts in direct response to a nerve impulse. So with brown fat, it's a nerve impulse from a cold stress. And brown fat cells contain many small droplets and a high number of these iron-containing mitochondria, and that's why they're dark. And there's a lot of proliferative blood vessels which conduct and produce heat. And it's these blood vessels and these dark brown mitochondria that give brown fat cells that brown color. So in response to cold stress, norepinephrine is released into the nerve endings in brown fat, and it directs it to be metabolized or burned. So when it's signaled to burn, brown fat cells generate more energy than any other tissue in the body. This metabolic activity produces heat in the core regions of the body. So this process is called non-shivering thermogenesis. Now, the process looks like this. When the skin senses thermal stress, and generally it's first going to feel it on the face because, we tend to dress the baby, but it's going to be on the face and the skin. So they sense that thermal stress, and thermal receptors transmit those impulses to the hypothalamus, because remember that regulates our temperature control. And the hypothalamus stimulates the sympathetic nervous system to release the hormone norepinephrine. And this is detected by a receptor in the brown fat cell. A cascade of biochemical signals is triggered, leading to glycolysis and fatty acid oxidation. And during that fatty acid oxidation, this protein is developed and is triggered, and it's called uncoupling factor 1 or UCP1. And UCPC1 travels into the mitochondria. Remember those little brown fat cells. And a normal cell uses mitochondria like a battery, providing energy that's mostly stored in a molecule called ATP. And we learned all that in A&P in college, right? But in the brown fat cell, UCP1, this protein short circuits that battery. So it's not going to trigger energy. And what it does is it causes it to heat up instead of producing ATP or energy. What it does then is that brown fat cell is activated in that mitochondria. It produces heat, and that brown fat cell soaks up fat and sugars from the diet, and it burns them for heat in the mitochondria. So when you think about babies with hypoglycemia, we know about this cascade when babies get cold. If you ever get a baby from labor and delivery and they come up with hypoglycemia, sometimes the first thing to do is check their skin temperature. They might be cold. They might be activating non-shivering thermogenesis, because this protein that's activated soaks up those brown fat cells, soak up sugars and all of that from the diet. So this is as simple as I can get into understanding what happens with non-shivering thermogenesis. So the takeaway tip from this area is that brown fat metabolism is the process infants use to produce heat.